Hi everyone, Steve Twinley here. This is my home studio. Thanks for coming and checking out my latest video. So tonight's video is all about building a song in layers, and I'm going to use an example of a tune called Meet Me on the Moon, which I released a few weeks ago. So it's a good example of a song where I started with a fairly basic idea on an acoustic guitar, then added various different layers to it until it eventually became something completely different to where it first started. So step this way and I will talk you through it. To find me, to find me. So before I get into all the production stuff, I'm going to talk a little bit about the song itself and the melody, which I really like. It's a really simple melody, but it's quite effective, I think. So I had this chord progression, really basic chord progression, just starting on an open G and just working way down to C. And I just quite like this, sort of like, couldn't really be much more simple than that. And I experimented with different strumming patterns. It started off quite fast, quite jaunty. Your best friend as a songwriter, apart from having a very understanding wife who doesn't mind you playing the same thing over and over again, is a capo. So I had that sort of start with an open G, really easy to play, and then I just messed around with having a capo in different places. So I think originally I was going to go for something like this. And I experimented higher up as well, and all of those sounded quite good. That one sounded a little bit too much like Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls, so I ditched that one. But yeah, after playing around with this for a while, I was then trying different vocal lines and then actually worked out best to just play the open G. So I quite liked the way that the vocal line you could have one basic vocal line and then lots of different harmonies, and we'll come onto the layers in a minute. But I wanted something really simple that I could just make the lyric probably the most important feature of the song. So I had this chord progression, just this. So there was one vocal line which I thought of which could pretty much mirror the guitar. So da 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 da. This is before I had any lyrics or anything. Da 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 da. And then of course you got the lower melody, which is more like the guitar. Da 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 da. That just in itself, those two lines make a really nice harmony. So there's da 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 da, and then da 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 da. And then I wanted to have some additional layers, which when we do the vocal bits in a while, you'll see how it came together. But I had this, I like the idea that there was one vocal line that stays the same the whole way through. So one note just held, it's like da da. And then this high falsetto one as well. Da, 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 da. And the combination of those sounds really nice, and it's really quite simple. So I started off with that chord progression, tried not to sound too much like the Eels, and then I thought, okay, well, that's quite a nice intro, it's quite a nice chorus. What can I do for a verse? Bit too obvious to go down to a G and start the verse on a G. Dangerous, sounding too much like Ronan Keating, you know that you say it best, you and you say nothing at all. Anyway, you get the idea. So I thought, well, why not go on to a D for the verse? So I've got this as the intro. Da, 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 da. So on that C, hold the C, back into the verse, go up to D. I lost my train of thought, and I don't know what to. So that I lost my train of thought was probably the first line I had for the song, and I thought, oh, I quite like that, that's good. So just played around with that, just played it over and over and over again. Again, experimenting with the capo, trying it higher pitched, trying it starting on a different root note, so starting on the C. But there's something really nice about that open G. It's what I like about Good Riddance by Green Day, you know, Time of Your Life. Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. So again, I'm trying not to rip off people too much. I'm trying to just come up with my own idea, but there's only so many chords, right? So that's pretty much the song structure, really. I have the intro, then it goes up to the D for the verse. I lost my train of thought, and then we come into the chorus, which is the finally, and the various different layers. And then I thought I'd throw in an interesting, not even sure what that chord's called. One of us leaves too soon. Pause. Meet me on the moon. And I thought those bits were quite interesting because it would make the vocals stick out more. So, I mean, the guitar bit's fairly ploddy, but I really wanted to push the vocal line, the lyrics, the sort of meaning behind the song, to keep the backing fairly basic. And then I was thinking, okay, well, what do I do with my hands? So what's the strumming pattern? Because I could have done something a bit ploddy. The actual guitar, the original one, was quite fast strumming without a pick, but not really finger picking, just like strumming with my, sorry, you know, like the tips of my fingernails, I guess. So like. And originally it had quite a fast beat because you could almost imagine if someone had maybe hot rods and just literally hot rods on a snare drum with maybe a kick, like that was the original sort of mood. But I thought, well, actually, particularly as it became a little bit heavier, you know, lyrically, I wanted to have something that was a bit less fun and bouncy. So keep the strumming pattern on the guitar, but maybe have a half-time beat. So that's what it kind of came into. So instead of like doing a ta 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 ta, it's more like that's how I come up with drum beats and stuff in my head. I either click my teeth together or I do this like ta 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 ta. So if anyone hears me do it, they must think I'm a little bit crazy. But if you're a home musician, you probably do a similar thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And let's get on to the production stuff. So when it came to actually recording the song, I started by building it in layers, as I said earlier. And the first thing I recorded, usually I'd start with a beat, but for some reason I'd started with the acoustic guitar just on its own and recorded it with a pretty rubbish mic and got this sound. So you can hear it's not a particularly great sound quality, and I tried to clear up the EQ a little bit, knocking down some of the treble because it was a little bit scratchy sounding, probably because I was using the tips of my fingernails and I was recording in my lounge, I think it wasn't in the studio. So I had that sound as the basic thing, and before I added any further layers, and I was recording to a metronome, which morally I don't really like the idea of using a metronome. I like that spontaneity, the live feel, but to be honest, when you're recording by yourself, and if you're not going for a full kind of rock sound, really, who cares? Just use a metronome. It makes your life so much easier. So I recorded that with a bit of a metronome in my headphones. I then added a couple of layers. So that was panned dead center, and then I had one acoustic guitar on the left, one acoustic guitar on the right, doing a sort of a nice harmony thing. So those two guitars sound like this. So I'm not sure how well that comes across on this video, but there's loads of background noise, lots of hiss, but again, I buried it in the mix, it doesn't really matter too much. So originally it had almost a bit of a Nick Drake kind of feel to this. And I kept that. There's actually another version of this song which is just purely acoustic guitars and the vocal layers. But for the main song I wanted to then have a bit of a beat. And I was thinking, okay, well initially there was that sort of almost I think you call it a skiffle beat, that sort of like tick-tack, 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 tick-tack. I thought that's too energetic, and I wanted something that had a bit more kind of gravity to it. So I created a beat. One of the great things about recording on Logic is that you can just create a beat by literally tapping the keyboard. And so I built this beat from scratch. It really didn't take very long because it was literally just, I think I pressed the C key for a kick drum, the B for a snare drum, and then I just copied and pasted a whole load of sort of hi-hat sounds. So the drums started off like this. Let's do them in isolation. So I wanted the snare to only really be on the 4, a little bit of interesting bass drum stuff, but I didn't want it to be too sort of busy. Where the busyness in that beat comes from is more that the sort of the hi-hat. So the actual kick drum is more like dun ta dun dun ta dun ta dun dun ta, and then the rest of the beat that gives it the momentum is that tick 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 of the hi-hat. I'll play it again. I think when I came up with that, I was actually thinking of Deftones, because I love the way that if you listen to some of the stuff on Around the Fur and Whitepony, it's just some amazing, really quite simple beats, but he just does some really cool stuff with the kick and the snare. I'm not comparing myself to Deftones, by the way. But also I think I was listening to Radiohead. I was listening to the King of Limbs album, which is really underrated. It's a great album. And the beats on that are so weird. There's some really cool, like sort of double tracking of drums with it's almost sort of like tumbling over it. You've got one set of drums. I forget what the name of the song is. It'll come back to me. Where you've got one set of drums on one side of the audio spectrum and one set of drums on the other side, and they're almost playing completely different things, but it has still quite like a cool groove to it. I was trying to create something like that. Then I thought, well, let's just layer it again, just add more, because I wanted to just throw loads at this song. I think in total there are 40 different tracks on here, which is a little bit over the top probably for a solo artist, but hey, you can have fun with it. It's just a creative space, isn't it? You know, just trying to do something that inspires me and, you know, throw more at it and see what happens. So I added this tape delay, just a subtle one, but just gives a little bit of extra, sort of adds a little bit more in the background. So every time there's a snare hit, it mostly seems to accentuate the snare. It's like da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So every time you hit the snare, there's this sort of extra layer. I think I then added a few other drum sounds. Because when I had the whole mix, it was really muddy. So I thought, well, let's go for a really kind of high sounding snare. Just this here. And I quite like this. There's a really big reverb on it. Almost sounds like a gunshot in the distance. And I thought that was a really cool thing to just add in there as an extra layer. So that plus the other one, plus a couple of other drum layers, makes this. Now on Logic, you can add these presets, and there's one that's called African Kit, which I thought was quite cool. And I didn't create that, that was just an Apple beat. So I just layered all this stuff together. It sounds much more effective if you've got headphones on and you can listen to left and right. But it's quite a big drum sound because it's about, well, it's literally, 4 different drum tracks all added together. And there's a little bit of phase cancellation as well. Probably if you're a professional studio engineer, you'd be going, what the hell are you doing? But actually, I think it sounds quite interesting. And then in the context of everything, so if I don't just play the drums but play the whole mix, so this is now the whole everything together. So that's with the acoustic guitar buried quite deep in the mix in the end, drums quite loud. I then had, so the bass I thought was quite a nice sounding bass. Quite nice. No, there's no effect on the bass at all. It's literally just DI'd straight in. I think I actually boosted the treble a little bit and just cut out a little bit of the bass because it was getting really, really muddy with the drums and stuff. So then I had, there were a couple of other layers of, I added a piano, some sort of flying clav and some cinema strings, and then some additional other percussion. So this is another layer of stuff. So that's the piano bit. Some strings. That was just really replicating the guitar bit, but because the guitar itself is quite thin sounding, I wanted something that played the same melody but just had this real kind of. So that's what the cinema strings was. And then I also had these flying clavs, whatever they are, hard panned and quite quiet in the mix. So kind of going a bit over the top really with just playing the same melodies, but on each of the instruments I tried to do something a little bit different at the end of each line, just to keep it interesting. It does make the final mix quite muddy, and you have to listen really, really carefully to get all the different parts. So when I did the final mix, I had to knock out a lot of the lower mid-range because it was just getting really, really muddy. If you listen carefully to, I think things do come across, but there's a lot of instruments all in that same frequency spectrum. And in hindsight, I probably should have used slightly fewer layers, but I was having fun with it. So, the final bit for that intro is this. Now there's a song by Silverchair, it's the last track on their Neon Ballroom album, and it's called Steam Will Rise, and at the end of Steam Will Rise it has this beautiful like and this real kind of high-pitched, like quite hushed, sort of almost sort of whispered sounding vocal in the background. It's really, really nice sound, and I tried to come up with something similar. So I pretty much took a harmony from the later chorus and just put that into the intro. again, pretty much repeating the same melody. So there's just a lot of different layers doing mostly the same things to give this. Now, because there's so many different layers happening there, I thought, right, when the vocals come in properly, I've got to just cut those layers out, otherwise it's just going to be a total mess. So when the verse starts properly, it's this. I lost my train of thought. So the drums still the same, stay the same volume, but pretty much all the other instrumentation drops out apart from the bass and a little bit of acoustic guitar. Because at that point I want the vocals to become really powerful. I want the lyric to be the main thing that people get from the song. So when that first I lost my train of thought, I want people to go, oh, okay, I can hear that. I don't like songs when you don't really hear quite what the singer's actually singing. Although I do love Cradle of Filth and I have no idea what he's singing about. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we get to the chorus bit, and so for that, it's pretty much the same as the intro, but that's when I went to town completely on the vocal harmonies. I'll try and play all the vocal lines, and there's about 10 of them. I literally just recorded vocal after vocal after vocal after vocal. Anything that was out of tune, I ditched, and then everything else I kept. So this is all of the chorus vocals. Here we go. To find me, to find me, to find. That was quite, it was great fun doing it. It took me about an hour of just literally singing that same find me and find me, find me. Need to work on my falsetto. And just layering it all and adding loads of reverb and making sure also that you don't put all your vocals in one place, but you pan them. So the ones that are, that particularly the high pitched ones, stick them hard right, hard left, add loads of reverb, cut out a lot of the high and the low, so you end up with something that's really, in isolation, doesn't sound particularly great, but in the context of the whole song, it sounds lovely. So the main vocal I kept central, didn't really touch the EQ at all, but the ones to the side, I just cut out a lot of the extreme highs and a lot of the extreme lows. Otherwise, it sounds like lots of versions of me, and no one wants that. So I went for, I tried to almost have a choir kind of sound, where the backing vocals, hard left and hard right, might just sound like anyone, not me. To find me, to find me. And I think it sounds alright. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, this song was quite easy to record. I know I added layer upon layer upon layer, but I was just having fun with it, to be honest. I just came around here a couple of evenings and did an hour's session at a time, just adding layers. And then the biggest challenge has been more in the mixing stage, just trying to get it sounding nice and crisp and clear. But the actual songwriting, I suppose the actual song I started writing quite a long time ago, liked that chord progression, played around with it, just played it over and over and over and over again. And then eventually, when I came up with the lyrics, that sort of, I challenge you to navigate this empty space to find me. And I thought, ooh, that's cool. I like that, because it's a bit ambiguous, but it's still, you know, it's got a bit of it's like a yearning, a bit of a sadness. And that's kind of what the song's about, I suppose. It's about, it's a conversation between a couple. So I guess if you're in a couple and you're in a relationship and you know that you're going to be together for life, at some point one of you's going to die. That's basically what the song's about. And it's about what happens then. And I just really like the idea that there's this conversation that happens of, well, you know, whoever goes first, I'll meet you. And I thought that was nice. It was quite emotional. The people I played the song to so far have had, you know, a reaction that makes me feel proud for writing it, I guess. And so I wanted the production to sound full. I'm not an expert producer at all. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just want to have fun with it. I like to just throw loads of layers at it. And yeah, I'm proud of it. If you can have a listen to the song in full, it'll be on at the end of this video. There's also the video in isolation on its own as well. I'd love to hear your comments, love to hear your feedback, both on the song itself, the songwriting, the lyrics, the production. I put a video together for it as well, which I thought was quite a nice touch. But yeah, I hope you get something from it. And if you're a home musician and you enjoy creating stuff, hopefully you've learned a little bit, a few little hints and tips from what I learned. But main things to bear in mind are, if you're recording lots of different layers, make sure you make full use of the panning. And if you're panning stuff hard right, hard left, knock out a lot of the EQ, otherwise it's just too much. What's that? And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for tuning in, and please let me know what you'd like to get in the next video, because I'm excited about doing some more. Hopefully it'll be stuff that's genuinely useful and of interest to people who are recording themselves. See you soon. Bye.
Lost my train of thought, and I don't know what to say to you, 'cause now air is thick with grief, and I challenge you to navigate this empty space to find me, to find me, to find me. If one of us leaves too soon, meet me on the moon. Let's make a plan. Whatever happens, we will do the best we can.